On the morning of 15 October 1996 in Berlin, Federal Transport Minister Matthias Wissmann stood beside Deutsche Bahn's chief executive Heinz Deer and Berlin's mayor Eberhard Diepgen and opened a new trade fair called InnoTrans. It filled just 3 halls, a little over 4,500 square meters in total. 172 companies had come to show what a train could be. 6,376 visitors walked through the doors that week. The rolling stock itself sat 8 kilometers away at the Wilmersdorf freight station because the exhibition grounds had no track of their own yet, so buyers had to travel across the city just to see what they had come to buy. Siemens was there, so was InnoTrans, and Linke Hoffmann Busch, and Deutsche Wagenbau, and a young supplier called Knorr-Bremse. Nobody in that first hall called it the biggest rail show on Earth. Nobody there had any reason to expect it would still exist 30 years later. That claim was still years away. 2 years later, in 1998, InnoTrans returned to Berlin, joined by the International Union of Railways' own high-speed rail congress. The exhibitor count more than doubled to 403 companies, spread across 10,500 square meters. Visitor numbers followed, climbing past 13,000. Then, in 2000, the fair doubled again, without any outside congress to carry it. Messe Berlin's own organizers began calling it a leading trade fair worldwide. The pattern that would define the next 2 decades was already set. Every 2 years, the numbers grew by 20 to 40%, and nobody could say exactly when it would stop. It did not stop in 2008. That autumn, as banks failed and markets froze across the world, InnoTrans opened as scheduled. Alstom used the show to unveil its AGV high-speed train, betting on rail even as the wider economy contracted around it. The recession that emptied trade fair calendars elsewhere left this one untouched. By then, exhibitors from outside Germany already made up more than half the show floor, and the fair had stopped being a German event that foreigners attended and had become, in effect, a foreign event that happened to sit in Germany. The fair crossed its first great threshold in 2010. More than 2,000 exhibitors from 44 countries filled the entire Berlin exhibition grounds for the first time in the show's history. Visitor numbers passed 100,000 for the first time as well. 52 new products were timed to debut that September because manufacturers had begun scheduling their own launches around the fair's calendar, rather than the other way around. Siemens brought its Valero D high-speed train out onto the display track. The rail industry had stopped treating InnoTrans as an event to attend and started treating it as a deadline to build toward. By then, the fair had settled into 5 segments that still define it today: railway technology for the vehicles themselves, railway infrastructure for the track and the systems that keep it running, public transport for buses and urban transit, interiors for the cabins passengers actually sit in, and tunnel construction for the machines that dig the ground the trains run through. Deutsche Bahn, the same national railway whose chief executive had opened the very first show, kept a stand in that railway technology hall at every edition that followed, a constant in a fair that otherwise rebuilt itself larger every 2 years. 2 years later, in 2012, organizers formalized what had already been growing on its own inside that interior segment. They launched a separate public transport and interiors hall forum, a series of multimedia presentations built around new design options for mass transit cabins. A standalone spin-off show devoted purely to interiors had been planned for 2011, but it was postponed before it opened because the main fair itself already needed every hour of staff time it could find. Through the middle of the decade, InnoTrans still kept its weekend public days, when families who were not buyers or engineers could walk the outdoor track and climb aboard locomotives that were otherwise reserved for the trade. That tradition lasted through 2016. While Messe Berlin's own managers worried about running out of floor space, 2 of the biggest names on that floor were negotiating a merger of their own. In September 2017, Siemens and Alstom announced plans to combine their rail businesses into a single European giant, built to compete with state-backed manufacturers from China. By February 2019, European antitrust regulators blocked the deal outright, warning that it would leave too little competition in signaling systems and high-speed trains. The two companies kept showing up in Berlin afterward, as rivals, not partners, both still building toward the same fair that had almost hosted their wedding. It did not survive the edition that followed. By 2018, the growth had become a logistics problem rather than a marketing one. All 41 available halls were full, and Messe Berlin's own senior vice president admitted there was a waiting list for as much as 6,000 square meters of space that simply did not exist yet. A new hall was already under construction, though it would not be ready in time for that September. Companies that wanted more room were told to build upward instead, stacking their stands across 2 or 3 floors. The weekend public days, the ones that had run since the show's earliest years, were quietly dropped, officially for lack of space and logistics. The fair that had once needed a freight station 8 kilometers away just to display its trains now had nowhere left to expand within its own fence line, and no room left over for anyone who was not there to do business. Then, in 2020, the calendar broke. The pandemic that halted travel and gatherings worldwide reached Berlin before that year's edition could open, and for the first time since 1996, InnoTrans did not take place. 2 years of momentum, the 20 to 40% growth that had held since 2000, went untested. Nobody knew in the spring of 2020 whether an industry built on personal contact and physical hardware could simply wait 2 extra years and pick up exactly where it left off. It could. In September 2022, InnoTrans returned with 2,771 exhibitors from 56 countries, 137,403 visitors from 137 countries walked the halls that week. The comeback was not just a recovery, it landed close to a new high, delivered by an industry that had spent 2 pandemic years redesigning its own supply chains and still showed up in Berlin ready to sell. 2 years later, in 2024, InnoTrans broke every record it had ever set. 2,940 exhibitors from 59 countries occupied not just the display halls, but the outdoor grounds and the summer garden as well, every square meter the fairground had to offer. 226 new products debuted that September. Messe Berlin's own chief operating officer, Dirk Hoffmann, called it the largest trade show ever held in Berlin, in a city that hosts hundreds of exhibitions every year, and said the fair now set its priorities around electrification, digitalization, and sustainability. For the first time, the fair carried a dedicated display built entirely around artificial intelligence, a new section called the AI Mobility Lab, tucked in among the locomotives and the signaling systems. Germany's Federal Minister for Transport called it a highlight of the industry's calendar at a moment when rail companies across Europe were short of skilled workers and needed the fair as much to recruit as to sell. Now the fair turns 30. InnoTrans 2026 runs from the 22nd to the 25th of September, 30 years to the month since Weissmann, Durr, and Dipken opened those first 3 halls. This time, it occupies all 42 halls Berlin has to offer, roughly 200,000 gross square meters, next to the same 3,500 meters of outdoor track where the Velaro D once stood. The first InnoTrans fit inside 4,500 square meters. This one needs 44 times that much room. The AI Mobility Lab that premiered in 2024 returns with a hall entirely its own, covering robotics, cybersecurity, and data protection for transport systems, alongside guided tours built specifically to walk visitors through it. 5 industry associations, the Association of the Bahn Industry, the German Transport Forum, the Association of the European Rail Industry, an electrical and digital industry group, and an association of German transport companies will run daily panel discussions at the dialogue forums, the same kind of gathering that once fit inside a single afternoon in 1996. More than 200 new and returning exhibitors have already registered, most of them from Europe, China, and India. The organizers built retrospectives into the program itself, 3 decades of trade fair history laid out for an industry that has never once, in 15 editions, built smaller than the year before. Walk the site in September 2026, and the scale becomes physical rather than abstract. Standard gauge track carries the high-speed trains and the freight locomotives, while separate stretches of broad gauge and narrow gauge track let manufacturers building for markets outside Western Europe show equipment that would not fit anywhere else in the world's exhibition calendar. Bus manufacturers still get their own static display area and a demonstration course, a tradition that has run for a decade, even as the weekend crowds who once watched from the sidelines stopped being invited. Inside the halls, the same 5 segments from more than a decade earlier still organize the floor, but each one now covers more ground than the entire fair did in 1996. A visitor who wanted to see every hall, every outdoor display, and every stand in the AI Mobility Lab could not do it in a single day, something that was never true of the 3 halls Wiseman opened in October of that first year. A year out, InnoTrans 2026 was already sold out.